Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and this is a response to thedmginfo. He did, and this is on his advice on backstory. So he said that you do not need a 15-page backstory; you need a 25-word backstory. And so I responded to that earlier, and then thedmginfo came back and responded to my video. It was a very nice response. It was very detailed. It was very timely, and I just, I was very appreciative of him responding to the video. And he was saying, and he had some points where he was saying he stood up and kind of doubled down on his position. So now I'm coming back at him, and again, I'm going to be saying I disagree with all the things that he said. So if you have a back and forth and two people are disagreeing frequently, to me that reminds me of a good old-fashioned East Coast, West Coast rap feud, right? So I just want to put into perspective the shape of this disagreement, right? I want this to be the right type of rap feud, right? So so Lil Wayne and Drake have a rap feud, and Drake and Kanye have a rap feud, and those are great rap feuds. They're back and forth. There's some insults thrown, back and forth, but generally it's all, it's good natured, right? This is not the type of rap feud that Tupac had and where he was shot, or the type of rap feud where Biggie had and he was shot. Not that type of rap feud. All in good nature. It's a good natured, right? So I want to pick up the different points that thedmginfo made. So one, he said, hey, if you write a 15-page backstory, then basically that player can get bored with that character and they feel trapped, right? So I just want to address that. So basically, players are getting bored with their backgrounds because your campaigns are too long, because campaigns are very long. So this is the old 1986 opinion. A lot of gamers, and I think thedmginfo is one of these guys who came up, saw RPGs in the 80s and the 90s, and there were campaigns that went on for 3, 6, 9 years, right? And he's probably very used to, saying to a friend, hey, you want to play in my D&D game? And then his buddy's like, yeah, I'll play in your D&D game, right? That stuff is over now, right? So to me, I go by the 3-5-7 rule, which is a campaign should be 3, 5, or 7 sessions. And the reason why is this is 2016, and basically, the world has changed. Netflix is out, and amazing comic books are out, and amazing video games are out, and the internet is here, and just a million things in Pokemon Go and a million other things that are just scrabbling for people's attention in a way that didn't happen in 86 and 96. So thedmginfo, if your players are getting bored, it's not because they wrote a 15-page backstory. It's because you're probably running a 10, 20, 30 session campaign the same way you did when it was 1986 or 1996, and things have changed. It's 2016. So I think that's really the reason players are getting bored. They're not long backstories that trap them. The second thing that the thedmginfo said is, he said, hey, I was speaking in hyperbole, right? And, hyperbole for comedy's sake. So, my take on that is, when you say something on the internet, and basically, he has a channel that is giving advice about tabletop role-playing games. And he has 10,000 followers, right? And he's in the same community as Nerdarchy, as Dawnforge Cast, as Fistful of Dice, and these guys are very serious about tabletop role-playing games. If you have a channel where you talk for hours and you give old players and new players advice, right, you could certainly make a joke, right? But if you're saying something heavy, like you need to get rid of 15-page backstories and move to 25-word backstories, that is a heavy statement. And I'll talk why that's a heavy statement in a minute. But you need to own what you say. in my opinion, you should own what you say. And so there's a few things here. One, you should own what you say. That's just good policy, especially when you are being prescriptive, when you're saying you should do this, right? The other thing is, I would just ask DMG Info. I understand DMG Info is absolutely a subject matter expert on making miniatures material, creating terrain for a Dungeons & Dragons game, for crafting and making of miniatures and doing painting and all these kind of things. Now, in this point, my question to you, DMG Info, is: are you out of your lane here? When it comes to story, is that an area where you're just a jester or a clown, and we shouldn't be listening to what you're saying? And hyperbole for comedy's sake is you're saying, I just don't take those things that seriously. It's perfectly okay to be a jester or a clown on a topic that you're out of your lane on, right? But I actually listen to your channel, and when you say things that are prescriptive, I was considering you in the same box as Dawn Forgecast and Nerdarchy and Fistful of Dice and the guys who know about story mechanics and know about rules mechanics, and what they're saying to do in those games is actual advice that is serious for new players and old players. So that's my question: are you a subject matter expert, or are you a jester and a clown? One or the other, right? So I think that's a legitimate question, and it's okay to be either one, but I would like to know, and the reason why I think that's a very legitimate question is because I'm not sure if you're aware of this, DMG Info. Sarcasm on the internet is often not a great idea. People don't understand your cadence. People don't understand your inflection, right? If they don't know you for a long time. So you might think, oh, this is haha funny, but just you're aware there's a thing on the internet that a lot of people do understand, which is sarcasm on the internet often doesn't play as well as when you're saying it in person, right? So just throwing that out there, right? So the next topic he talked about was, he said, if you write a 15-page backstory, you should be able to change that in flight during your game, right? 100% disagree with that. I don't think, when I put something into my game, it stands, and I expect the players to do the same. Right? So when they make a backstory, I take that backstory seriously, and I'm going to build my story so that what they wrote matters, right? It's not just willy-nilly. You can't just throw parts out, right? And the reason why is you're telling a story together, and you want the things you say to last, and in that you want a story that people can remember, and that is one through line, right? So I don't think people should just change a backstory in the middle of gameplay, because that's not fair to other people who may have written their backstories to coincide with the backstory that was written originally, right? And that's okay. Like having parts of the game that are stuck, that are constant, right? That is absolutely okay, especially when it is content that has been created by the players. The story content that is being created by players is the absolute most valuable content there is in the game over what the game master has supplied. And the reason why is we're always trying to get player engagement, right? Player engagement. Now, the other thing that I think, the reason why I'm readdressing this issue and saying that I do think DMG Info is wrong when he says you should have a 25-word backstory and not a 15-page backstory, or that you don't need a 15-page backstory. You only need a 25-word backstory. And the reason why I disagree with this strongly is this position, which he has now doubled down on and defended his original position, is encouraging the least engaged players and discouraging the most engaged players. So Dungeons and Dragons, the company that made it, Wizards of the Coast, Mike Merle, did a lot of work in 5th edition to make the background have game mechanics and reward players for having a robust background, right? And so that is 5th edition, and 5th edition has been an incredibly healing event for the Dungeons & Dragons community. What did it heal? It healed the schism that 4th edition created. And it was a major schism within the Dungeons & Dragons community. And the schism was because Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition was a power gamer's paradise. It was, all game mechanics. There was no talk of backgrounds. And, it was really, it was all about, combat options and, and there was a lot of disagreement on that. And so what happened is, it schismed the community, cut it right in half for 4 to 6 years. It was a long time. And so it took 5th edition to reunite the community. And so when you say, hey, you only need a 25-word backstory, and you don't need a 15-page backstory, what you're saying is a whole lot of things. One, you're saying, let's go back to 4th edition. Let's throw away the healing and the unity that has been established by 5th edition, and let's return to the days of making power gamers preeminent and making Munchkin characters the preferred characters. And you're also saying your most engaged players, the guys who are creating art, the ladies who are creating art, the gals who are creating art for your game, the people who want to people who actually want to participate in the creation of a shared story, those are the people that you need to push back, and make sure that they only have a 25-word, background story when the game starts, so that the game master has the optimum amount of room to make stories that he or she wants, right? And I just wholeheartedly disagree with this. I just really feel you should not be encouraging your least engaged players, and you should not be discouraging your most engaged players. And saying that, that they can put that material into the game as the game flies through, right? Verbally is really suppressing also the art of Dungeons and Dragons. And so there are actually hundreds of novels that have come out of good Dungeons and Dragons games because people practiced writing backstories, and many of those backstories became full-fledged novels. And so basically DMG Info's opinion is the suppression of art, and that's one of the reasons why I am passionate about this, and I don't think anybody should suppress art, right? Now, DMG Info is not stopping anyone from making art, but he is certainly discouraging it. And that, to me, is just not a great thing. And so one of the things is, I feel like DMG Info, at this point, this is a really, in my opinion, the other thing is, I would not be having this conversation if, it was just two people talking, at a bar or at, a Gen Con convention, and they were just having this conversation. But, DMG Info, you have 10,000 followers, and there is a conflict between some of those players. There are players who come to their game masters tables and they have to deal with somebody, they have no backstory because they're playing a murder hobo and all they want to do is chop things apart. And they look across the table and somebody's handing a 15-page backstory to the game master. And before your video, that player is going to think, oh man, should I be more engaged? Should I maybe work a little harder on my character? Should I invest more in the game before the game even begins, so that everybody is blessed by a piece of art that I created, or just so that I understand the motivations of my character? And you're saying, no, just calm down. Your 25-word, background is all you need, right? And so you're equipping those power gamers to never become artists, to never become fiction writers, to never think of Dungeons and Dragons in what Gary Gygax created it to be. Dungeons and Dragons is not playing pretend. Dungeons and Dragons is not a game. Dungeons and Dragons is exactly like baseball. It's exactly like comic books. It's exactly like jazz. It is a pure piece of Americana, and it is a very special. It is a very special platform that creates art. It is high art, and just as Coca-Cola, has people buy Coca-Cola refrigerators for thousands of dollars now, 100 years after Coca-Cola was created. It's because they realize the value of that very genuine, special thing that was created. And Dungeons and Dragons is a very special, wonderful thing. And when you tell people that they shouldn't consider it a high art, and you tell them that 25 words is all that is needed, and that 15 pages of prose is not needed, that's not useful. And especially to 10,000 players, which many of them may be new, or many of them may be power gamers that are at the table, and they're hoping that those engaged players who are turning in 15-page backstories are pushed back. And so your post gives them essentially support, and so I just ask you, DMG Info, to kind of think about that, and think if you really strongly believe that all you need to start is a 25-word backstory. I just really don't feel that's true, and I really feel that we should really join Mike Mearls in his attempt to make Dungeons and Dragons a platform for art. And I think guys who have joined Mike Mearls, who are doing the same thing in other systems, are guys like Fred Hicks, a huge art supporter within tabletop role-playing games. Guys like Robin Laws, a brilliant, innovative artist, creating other artists, encouraging people to write, encouraging people to tell stories before they even hit the table, right? Not telling people, don't worry about stories before you get to the table. Just to write 2 sentences, you're fine, right? Guys like Monty Cook, who are just innovating in the space of the tabletop role-playing game at a level that has never been seen. I truly believe Monty Cook is the Leonardo da Vinci of tabletop role-playing games, the modern-day Gary Gygax, and he is all about art and creating stories and being collaborative, and he doesn't equip power gamers. And so that's my question to you, DMG Info. Do you truly want to equip power gamers and push back the artists that are within our field? And also, the power gamers that are there, if you don't equip them, I believe many of them become artists. They are inspired by other players at the table who are writing those long background stories. And I think that's really important, to leave that space for them to grow. And I think that, your post of saying you only need a 25-word backstory really encourages them, don't grow, stay right where you are. So I really do appreciate, I will say this, your original post certainly, gave me a lot to think about. And I think it's good to be thinking about backstories at this level. But sometimes when you're wrong, you're wrong. And, and I think you should reevaluate what you're saying, especially you have a lot of people following you, and you do. And the reason why you have a lot of people following you is, I think, because you are a subject matter expert on crafting. And I think, you want to use your platform for good. And that's my point. So I'm asking you to join us on the 15-page backstory side, and encouraging people to bring 15-page backstories. I think every player should have a 15-page backstory before the game starts. That's what's beautiful about this hobby, not 25-word backstories. That's not what's beautiful about this hobby. And I just want this hobby to grow and to be more beautiful, and really to honor Gary Gygax. And that's important to me. I think he saw what this could be. And the guys like Hicks, and the guys like Cook, and the guys like Law, they're pushing to make sure that 15-page backstories are at the table, and not power gamers bringing 25-word, background stories to the table. It's just, And I think that's the end goal. Is I would really like to see art grow through Dungeons and Dragons. Thank you.